would it take to get a return to pay for the 1.5?
Well, since you're not paying for it, that's not really the question. The question is, are you saving money on your electricity? In other words,
Well, somebody pays for it.
No, I know.
On the sky.
Right, but here's the thing. The way that works is there's a 30% tax credit that if we do it this way, that most of the finance is being paid from. So let's say it's $1 million. So $333,000 of that in tax credits to that off-taker, or to that financier. There'd be another piece that's debt, but the way this works is that for the members, you're not exposed to that. That isn't your problem. That is really the problem with the project developer, which would be Co-op Power in this case. We are sort of the junior partners there. This is very new. So we partnered with an experienced Massachusetts outfit.
So Co-op Power would be the one that actually be doing the funding of this project?
They would be getting the funding. They have finance partners that can do equity and debt. And so let's just say, for the sake of argument, you decided this was going to be all residential. Probably we're not going to go there, but
Right.
for a megawatt, you can get about 100, 120 typical households. If it were pay-as-you-go, the way that would look to all those members is they would be paying monthly, and that's it. In other words, the total debt for the project, they aren't going to even see.
Instead of paying NICEAG, you'd be paying Co-op Energy or whatever.
You would be credited on your bill, so you wouldn't be paying, you wouldn't be paying NICEAG that supply charge, you'd be paying the LLC that supply charge. So it's very different than if you do it on your own home, and if you don't have cash, you have to finance that, right? So let's say you can take the tax credits, and you can get the NYSERDA incentive, so that's about 63% of the cost. One way or another goes away. Obviously, you pay your taxes, you get the rebate, but the rest of it you have to come up with. And if you have to finance that, you have to pay it off over time. That would not be the way it works with pay-as-you-go. For the upfront model, that would be the way it works. But each member would simply be responsible for the amount of kilowatt hours that they were subscribing for, and no more. So if, let's just say for the sake of argument, the town chose to take 40%, which is, for shared solar, the maximum that any one off-taker is allowed to have is 40%. Then it would be that 40%, say 400 kilowatt hours, that you would be paying for, in essence, one way or the other.
Right. Okay, I know, I've heard through conversation, somebody said that the school uses about $40,000 worth of electricity a year. And they'd be the big subscriber. I think
Do we know what their quantity of use is? How much?
We had the numbers. I don't remember what they.
Yeah, I can't remember.
They sent us all the bills. But
Yeah.
Yeah. See, that's the kicker. If we wanted to be able to service the school and the municipality and other people, we'd need something bigger. That's not to say that we couldn't eventually get there.
What do you mean bigger? Bigger
Bigger array. Bigger array. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, my guess is that the school probably uses all of that power. I don't really know. I don't know. I'd have to.
In this situation, you couldn't sell more than 40% of it.
Not for a shared solar project. Now, the other thing you could do is say, instead of having a shared solar project, we're going to focus on the school or the municipality or what it is, but that's a different sort of project. There you're looking for a standard behind-the-meter, public sector, municipal solar project as opposed to a shared solar project.
So there would not be a system that could go onto the three-phase line?
Oh yes, it's nothing to do, see, the technical aspect of this is going to come down to the land, which we've heard looks good. I know we have to look into the cap landfill. Yeah. With landfills, sometimes you have to ballast rather than penetrate for obvious reasons. We don't know where that is going to lie until we look into it. But it's really the financials that are in play here. The size of the array, the interconnection, the permitting, the land, all of that is agnostic as far as, in other words, it doesn't matter what model you're using. You're producing X amount of electricity from X amount of panels on X amount of space. Then the question becomes, what's the financing package and how do people end up saving any money from this?
Right.
And so what I will say is that it has been very challenging for municipal arrays or school arrays to work because they typically get lower rates than the current incentive level supports, and that's something that we have been screaming about for about a year and a half. I don't know if you know Lou Alstad. He's on the Cooperstown trustee board. He's been working for 2 years on a project there. And then there's another project in Oneonta that's a county project. Super duper thin margins on those projects, and they're grandfathered under the old system, which was more beneficial, shall we say. So there's a lot we don't know yet about how this might work. What we do know is that the physical characteristics of the land look pretty decent. The next thing we need to find out if we go forward with this is what does that three-phase circuit look like? Because three-phase ain't all the same. If it's a fairly modest circuit, if there are already other projects that have gotten into the queue, then we could run into trouble. So it's really, the mantra that we have, because we're a nonprofit, we don't have a lot of money, is fail quick, fail cheap. So what we're hoping is going to happen is that you can land this grant, and so it's not going to put at risk anybody's money to find out all these things. Basically a feasibility study. Yes, sir?
So you're saying the school then has nothing to do with it?
I don't know. I don't know. They very well may be the only ones that have to do with the project. What we have to do is find out how much electricity they need, and if...
Session, sir, from like September to June. Now, we don't have a whole lot of sunshine, and I don't know if you ever took a gander around here, but...
That is actually not a huge factor. Basically, if you look at...
Canastota wagons, where are you going to get the sunshine?
I will tell you. So, essentially, the difference between how much power you produce in a given array has to do with how much sun there is. We have 20% more sun than Germany, which is the heaviest solar producer on the planet. In the southwest of the United States, they have 20% more sun than us. All that means is if we want the same amount of power as you could get in Phoenix, we need 20% more surface area panels. That's all. So it's really, that's not a thing to worry about.
Okay, wait, so the school typically buys their power cheaper. I mean, that's what you...
I don't know. That's what we need to find out. Yeah, right.
But this isn't going to be going to the school.
I don't know that either.
So this
Well, we
is
still need to
basically-
look into it.
Basically, you're looking at communities. with people
Possibly.
Somehow getting this power so you can sign up. Members.
Right.
Now, the power goes on to the line, right?
Goes onto the grid. Right.
So how do you, it's a pointless thing.
No, the power goes onto the grid. It's all about the value of the power. In other words,
The point was to save the world because they're going to have solar energy. If you're going to pump it in the grid, there's no saying that we're going to get back the energy that thing produces. So it's no different than having, it could be nuclear power, it could be
The power
anything.
going
So
in is all the same place.
I'm not sure who I'm responding
No,
to,
we're both
but
sorry. I mean, I'm just saying, if it wasn't for, if it's not for the school,
Mm.
we have existing structures.
so if
That's all I'm saying. I
Right.
just want to make that clear.
as far as the question of where the power goes, if you are not getting the power directly, that's not an issue in the sense that you're getting the value. If you are getting, right now, you all get power via NYSEG, right? Who supplies it? NYSEG doesn't. There's all kinds of other power suppliers, and you're not getting your electrons from them. You're getting the nearest, let me finish. You're getting the electrons that are nearest to you. So this is basically the same thing, except instead of God knows whose power plant, God knows where, it's a power plant here in town. That's what it amounts to. So you're not getting the electrons directly. As far as whether the school would be the best beneficiary or not, that's going to depend on whether the financials work for the school or not. And so, it's entirely up to you, A, whether you want to do this at all. B, if you do want to do it, where can there be a good benefit? Maybe it's the school, maybe it's not. Maybe it's residential, maybe it's not. At the end of the day, that's a decision for you all to make. Yes?
When you look at the amount of power that can be made, is it possible that the different entities can get a fraction of their power, not offsetting the full $40,000
Yes.
for the school, but maybe they saved half theirs, the town saves half theirs, since community members still could? I mean, it's shared, so the quantity is
Yep.
variable? You don't have
Yes, you can absolutely do that. Again, the question becomes, is there a saving? Right? Because as individuals, as private individuals, if we want to get solar but not save much, we can do that. My guess is that the municipality and the school probably wouldn't go for that, right? So they're going to want to be able to save something if it works. to produce savings, absolutely. Shared solar allows you to have the school take a cut, have the municipality take a cut, have a bunch of people take a cut. Again, it is a financial transaction. You're not talking about electrons going to these different entities.
I just wasn't sure if it's all or none.
No, that's, the only rule is you've got to have at least 10 members, and no one member can have more than 40% of the power. Yes, ma'am.
I just have to back up a little bit with the
Sure.
acreage. Like, what is the potential, what is the best potential we can get from this site? I mean, how you love it so.
Well, what Evan pointed out, maybe we can bring that back
It was
up here.
3.5 acres with 7.
It's about it looks like about 1.5 megawatts or 1,500 kilowatts.
At a time? Is that what you mean, like,
That's what it's going to be, that's what it's nameplate, right?
okay,
So the nameplate is what it has the potential to do,
okay,
but if it's super cloudy, it ain't going to do that much. If it's really, really sunny, and actually on a really sunny, cold day, you can often have huge production because the electronics like it cold.
right.
However, at this time of year, you don't have much sun because the days are short. Right? So the idea is you produce enough year-round to understand how much power you are going to get for everybody. Like if you do it on your house, the designer will take into account the fact that it snows here. They will take into account the fact that we live where we live, we get the amount of sun we get. So the design is designed to zero out your usage over the entire year. With this, if the idea is for each off-taker to take maybe a fraction as opposed to zeroing out your usage, that's a thing you can do if you choose.
So just to, for me, for a perspective, like when you say, however, a megawatt or whatever, what is that, that's equivalent to?
What does that look like?
Powering how
Yeah.
many homes?
About 300 homes would be 2 megawatts, so about 150 homes for 1 megawatt. Again, these are all averages. Like when we do these presentations, strictly residential, we talk about a 7 kilowatt or 7,000 watt system, and that's what the math is based on. I got a couple of girls that are going to be teenagers soon. We're not going to be using only 7 kW. On the other hand, if you're one person or a couple, no kids, not a lot of gadgets, you don't need 7 kW.
Right.
Right? So it's like anything else. And this is why when we ask, when people ask us, so how much is it going to cost for my house? We're like, well, I don't know. Let me see your electric bills and let me look at your site. Because without knowing those things, we can't say.
I've also seen recently, where they mix, like solar, like with hydro, where they use the solar energy to pump water and then use the water as a more of a consistent source of.
Yep, so that would be nice. I mean, one thing I know that exists, and I don't know if it exists here because I don't know this community well enough, microhydro. It is distributed all across the state. It is very underutilized. These are small dams. And right now the economics is not favoring them, and I think that's a serious problem because hydro is a great base load. Keeps on going, unless you've got a serious drought, right?
Yeah.
And in some cases it doesn't matter because given streams or rivers never dry up in certain areas. There's a whole world of things that we're going to be getting into, and another one is storage. And you've pointed out that with hydro, there are some places where they use pumped storage and essentially use the excess power to pump water up. And then when the price is right, the water flows down and off it goes. Obviously there's batteries, there's all kinds of different things that are coming down the pike. And in this region in particular, we have a lot of research and development assets in storage. I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about this, but I get enthusiastic.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Yes, two questions. One, the 700 kilowatt and 400 kilowatt ratings, is that like the maximum that it can produce in full sunlight?
Yes.
Right. So for cloudy days, you discount that.
You would discount that, and that's why when we're calculating how much power each off-taker needs, we have to take that into account. We don't just go with the nameplate value.
Yeah.
And the math for that is very well established. There's been a lot of solar development, believe it or not, in this part of the globe. So we know pretty much how we have to calculate to make sure that if you have a resident, they can X out their entire usage.
From a homeowner's point of view, suppose you have done all your numbers and you come up with a figure which you can sell power at per kilowatt. And I came to you with my electric bills to show how much I use normally. Then you could sell me part of that power, like some percentage of my total usage would be sold at a presumably lower price per kilowatt hour. Is that?
Yes, the only thing is that for residential, given how small your usage is, I'm not sure it would make sense to do a partial. You could.
Yeah,
You
well,
could. You could. Yes, you could. So the short answer is yes.
the short answer is yes. The long answer is my use varies. If I'm using machinery in the shop, it uses a lot more. If I'm sitting home next to the wood stove, it uses less. That's why I would show you my electric bill, and you would figure out, you know, what is a reasonable proportion.
We would actually look at the whole year, not just one, because as you say,
Okay,
one month doesn't do much for us. We have to
That's
have a
true,
whole
a
year.
year's worth.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the power's going down and going on to the three-phase line.
Right.
Okay. So NYSEG becomes the supplier because they own the line?
No, they're not allowed by law to become the supplier. They deliver your electricity to you. We're using their grid for this transaction.
So do they pay you for that power? How does that, who pays?
NYSEG credits, yes. The short answer is yes, they pay us and they credit you. So if we just keep it simple, NYSEG credits the project, credits you rather than they pay the project per kilowatt hour.
And now that price can change, obviously, as time goes on.
Well, so here's the rub. It actually shouldn't, but with this thing I mentioned, the value of distributed energy resources, it very well might. In other words, the current system, it's very easy to calculate over 25 years what the numbers are going to look like. And you lock it in currently, but in the future, maybe not. We don't know. We may know next week. Fortunately, we're not going to be very far down the road next week with this project, so certain things will be known. And, you know, I'll just say that this is a new thing. We get it. And, you know, we take the time that we need to take. The only thing that I will say is if we do go forward, there is something of a clock running in terms of interconnection. That is, we put in 750 to find out initially what's going on. And NYSEG has a certain number of business days to get back to us to tell us those things. But at a certain point, we have to put up or shut up. The first is $5,000 to get the full engineering data from them on that circuit. It can be less, it can be more, but that's typically how much it is. The way you sort of put down your deposit is you give them 25% of the upgrade cost. That is, we'll almost certainly need a transformer on site to step that properly into the three-phase line. Now, don't get me started about who ought to be paying for this, because I don't think it ought to be the developers, I don't think it ought to be any of us, but that's the way it is right now. That's just one thing to know. But there's a whole lot of details here, and so what we, maybe we failed, but what we're trying to do is keep it manageable at the outset, get everybody a sense of how this is and what you need to make your decisions.
Right.
On the average, what do they purchase the kilowatt at?
That depends on what, you know, again, it's going to matter what you're paying now. In other words, if we were going to do, let's say, residential only, the average all-in residential cost is 12 cents. My goal would be 10.5 cents, which sounds like nothing, but it's a 15% discount.
Does that 10.5 cents include
It would
the
be all
delivery fee?
No.
Well, I'm just gonna say, that when Dave and I went to Harpersfield, they were gonna do 60 acres of solar,
Yeah.
and they're still talking with it. And they were figuring on selling it for 10 cents a kilowatt. But I think if there's any homeowners or any landowners here, if you look at your electric bill, you're gonna be paying 5 to 7 cents a kilowatt. And you wanna pay 10 or plus
Wait, for
solar.
residential?
for residential.
No, not for residential. Those are the kind of
13.
rates you can get for the municipality or the school. Yeah, 12 or 13 cents.
We've got a residential, we moved into,
Are you in
2.5 years.
NYSEG or are you in the,
this is NYSEG, that off NYSEG, and the last bill was 5 point some cents a kilowatt on top of the delivery fee.
that is, yeah, I've never heard of that. That's
And
amazing.
we've
Wow.
gotta, we always.
So it's gonna be hard for you to save money.
Well, that's what I'm
That's got a
saying.
question.
Oh, yeah, sure, go ahead.
You're mentioning, Mr. Flood, you mentioned pricing. I
Yeah,
have day-night service with NYSEG, and they're my default supplier.
right.
Mine on average the last year is total, including delivery, is 10 cents.
That's a good price.
The nighttime provision is what saves them.
Hmm.
You get that with the delivery, with the supply chain.
I mean, that is the challenge, right? If we were sitting in Hudson Valley or in the 5 boroughs of Long Island, we wouldn't be having this conversation because you'd be paying 18 cents residential or 28 cents residential. There we have other problems in terms of siting and permitting. The reality is that sooner or later we're going to be able to beat any price. But right now we have to look closely at those margins. And yeah, I mean, if you are either an entity that must save money by statute, or if you're a person who must save money, it's going to matter what you're paying now. There's no question about it.
Well, go ahead, yeah.
He mentioned that the panels last 20 to 25 years, correct?
So just to be clear,
Because I've heard 15 to 20 is, once they get to that level, it's smart to replace them just because you want to be producing X amount of electricity per panel per space.
yeah, I guess if you have the money to do that, in the perfect world, yes, but you've already made an investment and paid the thing off after 20 and 25 years. So basically you're getting free power 75% of nameplate. I wouldn't want to throw that away because basically what you'd be talking about is replacing that whole thing, paying for it again. I would like to believe in 25 years that that would be a financially feasible thing to do, but at today's prices it would not.
But my understanding is every year they kind of lose some of their
About
ability.
0.5%. No, that's true.
That's
Yep,
what,
that's
that
absolutely true.
0.5%.
Right.
So at the end of, typically would be around, they'd still be producing 70% power, correct?
After 25 years, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing, what about the inverter?
Yeah, so the inverters typically don't last as long. That is taken into account in the financing along with operation and maintenance. So basically when you, let's say we hire Tatum to build this thing, we're also going to build in costs for operation and maintenance. Say the inverter breaks or more than one breaks, we need to have that money there in escrow. Also, who's going to cut the grass? Now, my own feeling is I don't want to see pesticides. I either want a guy with a mower, or if somebody's got sheep, we hire the sheep. That's got to be paid for, right? So you build in that cost over time. I mean, it's not unusual in the sense that there are other things that exist in the world that have long lives where you have to have a maintenance cost built in over time. I mean, your buildings are like that, your roads are like that. Part of the problem we've had with our infrastructure, we build this huge extent of infrastructure and we don't necessarily know how we're going to pay to maintain it over 25, 30, 40 years. With this, we don't have that luxury. We say, all right, this is what it is. This is how much it's going to cost on average if shit breaks, excuse me, or if the grass needs to be mowed, which it will. And so, yeah, at the end of life...
On average, what does an inverter last? On average, I'm not...
So the problem I'm having with that question is my knowledge base is more with inverters that are on homes. And most of them at this point are warranted for 10 years. Some of them are warranted longer. It would be unusual in my book for an inverter to last more than 15 years. That doesn't mean it can't.
What's the cost of an inverter?
That depends on which
This is going to be pretty sizable.
Yeah, no, they won't be cheap. So you'll have to build that into the budget.
You mentioned something about administrative costs along with this, and what are we looking at there?
Well, basically, all of that sort of thing, for the most part, is in the beginning, is in the pre-development and construction phase. The only thing that's left after that is managing the comings and goings of the members. If you do a pay-up-front model, that's pretty cheap, because that would be Co-op Power. They would have the responsibility to have the database, to manage the comings and goings. So, let's talk about that. If you do a pay-up-front model, let's say you move out of the load zone, because actually if you just move out of the area, that's not a problem. We're in this massive load zone called E, and it stretches all the way up to the Canadian border, down into Sullivan County. It's a weird shaped thing, but it's very big. So if you move from here down to Sullivan County, all we have to do is tell NYSEG to change your address, and off we go. Say you move over to Binghamton, that's Zone C. So you're going to need to unload your share. If you bought that share, someone will need to buy that share from you. If we end up getting to the point where we have a whole bunch of people in line that want your share, we could do that. Chances are that would be your responsibility for a pay up front. For pay-as-you-go, it's simpler, because we can turn new people on every 3 to 6 months, depending on what the regulation says at that point. So in that sense, you don't own that as an investment over time. You're just paying your $40 a month, $60 a month, whatever it is, and we'll have lots of people who want to take that spot if it ever becomes open.
Go ahead, William.
Okay. What about the disposal end? I know you said there's a recycle potential, and it's quite valuable.
Yep.
Well, let's just do a hypothetical that, for whatever reason, that did not come to be, or the market crashed, or whatever. Where would that liability end up? Would it end up with us?
Well, during the life of the project, that's going to be Co-op Power's responsibility. After the life of the project, that depends on what we work out. We can look at that. I guess we're foreseeing a future where steel and aluminum aren't worth anything. And I mean, you can worry about that risk if you wish. Frankly, there's all kinds of buildings and all kinds of things constructed sitting out there.
Sure, I just think in terms of a municipality, you're not in the
hauling business.
The hauling business, or you're not in appreciation or not of metals, et cetera, et cetera. So you might want to say, well, we don't want to worry about that, because that could potentially be a burden to somebody down the road. So
a burden or an asset.
It could be an asset, but again, that's a risk. You don't know.
The chart you had was what they were made up of.
Yeah.
You had a line other elements.
Right.
What are they?
Some rare earths of various sorts. There's been a little bit of confusion about that. There are a very small number of panels on the market, typical flexible panels, that are made up of a lot of rare earths like gallium arsenide and so forth. That's not what these are. These are silicon cells, and so these are trace elements that remain. There's more nasty stuff in my computer per pound than in those. And in fact, what we've done with electronics, and we haven't gone far enough, is we've mandated that the places that sell these things have to take them back so that they can be reclaimed. So if I buy this thing at Best Buy, when it goes off, I go back to Best Buy, I give it to them, and that gets shipped back to be reclaimed so they can take out whatever's valuable, reuse it, sell it, so forth.
Yeah,